Here's Joe.
Okay, Vicky, thank you. I appreciate it. It's always an experience to work with your spouse, and we uh, we work together, we eat together, we sleep together, we play together, we teach martial arts together, we take martial arts together, we do everything together. So sometimes I get in the way. So it's just a little bit of a challenge there at times. But anyway, this one here seems to be going smoother for us. Vicki and I are trying to do these webinars without using any of the staff, and it seems to be working okay. So, all right, so let's get started. The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is designed to be a Q&A. Now, it's been a little while since I've done one. We have been overwhelmingly swamped, and the reason I'm telling you that is I'm trying to downsize a lot of my real estate business now. There's things that we do that are, require a lot of our attention and in real estate, and then there's things that we do that don't require hardly any time. So on the ones that we do that don't require any of our time, those will still have going on. But the ones that require a lot of our time, our own real estate deals, I'm trying to back off from that so that I can spend more time working with my students and their deals across the nation. I probably won't do a large number of real estate deals in other countries. That's always been aggravating, and I'm trying to make things easy, simple, and smooth. Not saying that I won't take a look at it for you, but most times it's just so much easier just to do it in our country. We've been doing deals across the nation in all 50 states. I forget how many counties there are. I think it's like 3,200 counties or something. I can't tell you I've done deals in every county, but we've done a lot of deals out there, both ours and deals for our students. And so if there's ever a time where you're looking to do something and you want some experience taking a look at it with you, nobody can have all the answers. I certainly can't. No one can. But I've done over 6,000 deals now. I stopped counting a long time ago, but then I realized I had hit over 6,000, so I decided to start saying that instead of 5,000 anymore. But excuse me. But whenever you have something that you feel like you'd like another set of eyes taking a look at it, by all means, you certainly can give us a holler. So let's go ahead and start off this Q&A and see if we've got anybody who wants to ask some questions out there. I see some names on there that I know they need to ask questions, but let's go ahead and see if we can get some questions out of the way before we get into the other stuff. So if you would just raise your hand, let Vicki know that you have a question. We'll unmute you, and if you don't have a way of doing it that way, then you can type in your question. She'll read it to me. It's always the same way. Right in the beginning, nobody wants to ask any questions at all, and then it's like open season on questions once one person asks a question. What I'm looking for is people to ask questions about if they just want to buy and hold, if they want to use their money, if they want to use private money, if they want to use hard money, if they want to use bank money, if they want to do lease options, if they want to do seller financing, if they want to do subject twos, if they want to do fix and flip, any type of real estate at all. And if you want it to be residential or commercial or industrial, I've got a lot of experience in every one of those. So it's wide open right now for you to ask your questions about any of that stuff. How to get started, how to improve upon what it is you're already doing, any of that stuff. You've got the questions, now's the time to ask them. If you want to create your own staff, that's a big one right there. Creating your own staff and figuring out who should be doing what part and how to motivate them. Well, I just saw that question pop up. So Vicki, are you there? Vicki, you must be. Okay, there you go.
I'm here. Vanessa has a question. Says, talk about dogs. Have a property that I want to sell or finance, but the lawyer I'm using said it takes a lot to close a deal like that these days. He won't close one for me. Please advise.
Hold on. What was the talk about dogs thing in the beginning?
You know what? I'm getting them mixed up.
Okay.
Talk about dogs.
Talk about dogs? That's what Vanessa wants to do?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're not going to talk about dogs just because they're pets and stuff. But I'll tell you this. A lot of people are interested in having pets. They want to rent a place or they want to buy a place, and maybe they can't quite qualify to purchase one of it, and they've got pets. So on that side of it, when they're the buyer, they don't realize that we can go down that road. Now, of course, it's up to you to choose whether you want to allow pets or not. And of course, if you are allowing pets, you just up the down payment or the security deposit, depending on which direction you're going, to bring that world into your life of real estate investing. So a great way to advertise that is to try to make some sort of an agreement, a deal with, pet grooming companies, with like the PetSmart type places where they're, providing, they're kind of like a mini Home Depot for pets. I'll just say it like that. So there's a tremendous amount of people that obviously have, animals, and they deal with those kind of places. So getting some of your advertisement around or connected to those kind of businesses, letting people know that they don't have to get rid of their pet, or they can have those pets that they dream about, going through you and getting real estate through you, instead of trying to rent it from some regular type of landlord type situation, whether it's an apartment, condo, townhome, what have you, where they're not allowed to have pets. We have no problem with pets being in our properties. Now, I do kind of pay close attention to if they've got a dog that's, and we'll just pick on dogs right now, an animal, a dog that's more likely to attack someone and require additional insurance coverage for that. So there's that side of it. I think you have someone else sitting there also, Vicki, with a question. So just check to see if that.
I do.
What Vanessa was asking or bringing up. So make sure she's good to go with that. And let's go to the next question.
Okay, the next one is, the lawyer specifically said we don't touch lease options because they don't involve a transfer of title, and seller financing to an owner occupant requires.
Okay, who is it we're talking to in what state?
This is Erica Baruti.
Okay.
And.
All right, so
Erica in Georgia. In Georgia.
Okay. That's where I do most of my deals, is in Georgia, and we do lease options, we do seller financing all over the place.
She had more of a question, though.
Okay. All right. So let me first address what's already been said, and then hit me with your question, Erica. But the first thing about it is that there are attorneys who are real estate attorneys, but they're not investor-friendly attorneys. And it's nothing against the attorney. It's the way they want to run their business. And if it feels like it's a little bit too much of a hassle for them, or they don't quite clearly understand it, or they don't feel they can make enough, do a good enough job or make enough money off of doing that particular niche, then they don't do it, or they just say that, try to steer you away from that. So the bottom line is, lease options, there's no reason for an attorney to be involved in a lease option. Just the only thing that I get an attorney involved in is to review my contracts. My contracts have been reviewed by probably 50, 60 attorneys across the nation, 20 just in my state alone. And, judges, attorneys, they have all looked at my contracts and were well satisfied with the way they're written. I don't get any kind of negative feedback on any of my contracts, any of my agreements. The next part of this is that a lease option, you're just doing a rental agreement. There's no reason for an attorney to be involved in doing that type of a transaction. And that attorney, whoever said that, is correct. There isn't a title transfer. So they're not doing a closing, so the only thing that you could do is have your attorney do the lease agreement in front of you and we'll just call them the tenant and buyer. Eventually they will be the buyer, or they're trying to be. And so then you can just make yourself feel more comfortable and make them feel more comfortable understanding that this whole transaction of just leasing the property with the right to purchase it has happened in front of an attorney instead of just between you and that person. But the God's honest truth, I think probably in 50 plus years that I've been doing this, I've probably done 2 or 3 rental agreements in front of an attorney. The rest of them are just between me and the tenant and buyer. So the attorney's not necessarily there. Now, on the seller finance side, that's very easy. It's way easier to do seller financing than it is to do financing through a traditional lender, like, for example, a traditional bank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, SunTrust, BB&T, any of those kind of banks. They're way more difficult, way more aggravating than just doing a seller finance deal. And it's very common for my students across the nation to get their attorney on the phone with me so that I can talk them through the process of what we do and how we do it and how my attorneys do it. Every once in a great while, the attorney would rather talk to an attorney, but in most cases, once they start talking to me, they realize that I understand it pretty daggone well, and they're okay with talking to me about it. So there's that part. So let's make sure whatever the rest of Erica's question is answered. Victoria?
Yes, hey. Let me start off reading the first part of that question because I didn't realize there was a part to it before.
Okay.
So it says, I have a property that I want to sell or finance, but the lawyer I'm using said it takes a lot to close a deal like that these days. He won't close one with me, please advise.
Okay.
Then it says the lawyer specifically said we won't touch lease options because they don't involve a transfer title.
Okay.
And seller financing to an owner occupant requires all sorts of licensing from the Department of Banking and Finance. Unless you've got a loan originator who can help with the mortgage details, we encourage you to stay away from that.
Okay. So that's what the attorney has said to you. Is that correct? What Erica has typed is what the attorney has said to her.
Yes,
is that right?
That's correct. Okay.
So this is not an investor-friendly attorney. This is one who doesn't really understand fully what a seller finance deal is, doesn't understand the SAFE Act, doesn't understand how the Dodd-Frank Act works, and doesn't understand how most of that has been rescinded anyway. But there was a point in time where a lot of people, in 2009 when the SAFE Act started, where people thought that they couldn't do seller finance deals because it clearly says that you need to have a loan originator's license. I'm the one that started that whole thing where no one realized that across the nation about that. I had attorneys dropping their jaws, hitting the floor all over the place back in 2009 when I started teaching what had happened with the SAFE Act, which was, I think it was July of 2009, and then when Dodd-Frank kicked in. So basically, the first part is that there are a certain number of seller finance deals that you can do in your state, and each state has a little different number. A lot of them are the same number, but I think it's, if I remember right, it's either 3 or 5 in Georgia. Now, that's the person who is selling the property and holding the financing. So you can do a certain number of them in whatever state you're in. And Erica, I think you said Georgia. So you can do a certain number of them in a year without needing a loan originator, without needing all that kind of stuff. Now, in addition to that, anything that you want to do, you can just get with a person who is a loan originator, has a loan originator's license, and you create the entire agreement between you and the buyer. If it's the buyer, then that you have the loan originator review the entire thing and then stamp on it. I've got one sitting right here in my office complex right this minute. He's one of my commercial tenants. So you can do it that way. Now, the other part of this is if you're buying a property from an individual and they're seller financing to you, that doesn't count against you. That counts against them. So now they have a certain number that they can do also. And a lot of times when you're buying something seller financing from, an individual owner, they're not going to do more than one in a year anyhow. So then that number doesn't count. But anyway, so getting with an investor-friendly attorney who clearly understands a little bit more depth of what this really is makes it easy. But we do a lot of seller financing, so just making you aware of that, Erica. Sometimes it's better to get someone who's used to doing this all the time, and then finding the right investor-friendly attorney for the niche that you want to work. Okay. All right. Next question.
They said that someone else had also kind of said something similar to you, so they just wanted to, make sure. So
Sure.
they said thank you.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that at all, Erica. You're not hurting my feelings at all by saying that. I greatly appreciate you getting an opinion and a second opinion and even a third opinion. But I run into attorneys all the time, and I'll give you an example of this. This is a few years back, but there were two primary attorneys that I used in my local area. One was my out in the country attorney, and one was my city attorney. Now, my city attorney would do regular real estate transactions, all different types, subject to, seller finance, all of our typical transactions, but would not touch mobile homes, just would not do it, could not stand doing mobile home deals. My country attorney, who's also a judge, if he didn't do mobile home deals, he would have cut out 3/4 of his business, because in the country, there's a lot of mobile homes compared to regular stick-built property. So one would do one thing more of, and in my one out in the country, he didn't like doing commercial. He wasn't used to that, so he just wasn't comfortable with it because he didn't feel that he was good enough at it. And the other one just didn't like the aggravation when you're dealing with transferring a mobile home. So it just depends on what they like and they don't like, and they're going to advise you based on what they want their business to look like and continue to be. And it's just like you may not be a person that wants to do fixer-uppers. You might want to only do pretty houses. And so, and if you had somebody under you who wanted to start learning how to do it, you probably are going to take them down the road of doing just pretty houses and not fixer-uppers, and and vice versa. So I'm just kind of trying to throw that out there just for you to kind of realize that attorneys are the same way. A real estate attorney, there's a million different directions they can go. A lot of them, you'll see them going a little bit of real estate, and then they do a lot of estate transactions, wills and all that kind of stuff as well. And, then they figure out which one's making them the most money. Also, it has a lot to do with the staff that they have, the paralegals that they have under them. Some might be really good in a certain niche, but not good in another, and the attorney doesn't want to mess with it if they have to put hands on all the time instead of the paralegal doing all of it. So it just goes all around like that, Erica. Okay, next question. Victoria?
I don't see any more questions at the moment.
I see a question mark by Chris. Is that not? He may have just been.
No, there's no question.
No question there. Okay. All right. So, did we get what Vanessa was looking for? Did we cover the area that she was with the dog statement?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So just let us know if we haven't hit what it is that you're looking for in that area, guys. You have to understand. With me, you might be afraid that you might be asking a question that you don't hear anybody else asking about, and just make the assumption that it's not something that I do or something that I talk about. Nothing could be further from the truth. I try to be, as best I can, all things to all people, real estate wise and business wise, not just real estate, but other businesses as well. And I speak from the experience of physically doing it. If there's something that comes up, something pops up, and it's something I haven't done before, first thing I'm going to let you know is I've never done that. Here's what I think I would probably do, because I kind of think really quick on my feet. But I, if it's something that I'm not used to or don't have a lot of experience with, I'm going to let you know that right off the bat. So, but don't be afraid to ask something if you think it's kind of way out there. It doesn't matter. All right. So.
Okay. Joe.
Yes.
Vanessa said yes. Basically, I just wanted to know if there was any reason not to do pet occupied properties.
Well,
she thinks you covered it.
Well, I mean, and being she said it that way, when I talked about the insurance side of it, I mean, you could have, you could have pit vipers, you could have rattlesnakes. I mean, I particularly don't want that stuff in my houses, but I'm not going to turn somebody away. I'm just going to adjust the numbers so that mathematically it works out to my benefit. But in saying that, I also want everyone protected. So if there's any kind of controlled things at the county or city that's governed by, the municipality that's governing that property, I want them to be following the rules on it. If we just go to what everybody realizes, if you've got a dog and it's kept out back in the yard, there's the fence, if it's dependent on the size of the dog, the fence needs to be so tall and go so deep in the ground and blah, blah, blah. But any type of pet, if it's something that can be dangerous, now, of course, I'm not referring to a Yorkshire Terrier or whatever, but if it's horses, that's a good thing. If you there's a certain amount of real estate that you need to have, and I forget what it is now in my area. We have down to one horse now, but I believe it's 1 acre per horse where we're at. So if they have they got 5 horses and they're renting 3/4 of an acre from you, there's going to be a health department issue there. So, just kind of paying attention to all that, insurances, requirements. If the horse gets out or somebody goes up and touches the electric fence, if you got a, shocking fence, there should be the proper notification signs out saying that, so just kind of following those kind of things there. Plus, having insurance coverage in the event that somebody gets hurt on the property because of that animal. Okay, is that all the questions, Vicki, or is there any others?
Not at the moment.
Okay, all right. So when we get into this next thing, anytime you have a question, just raise your hand, and Vicki will tie into you, and we'll see. We'll do the best we can at getting you answered with the truth, and if we can't, then we'll try to make up a lie for you. Anyway, I'm just kidding. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about are signs. I have, matter of fact, I can see a couple of different people on here right now who are real interested because they've already used the sign company that we've used for, 25 years, I think. 25 years, easy. I know I've used them at least 20 years. And this was a family-run business, mother, father, kids who were, in their 20s and 30s, maybe even 40 years old now. And just all of a sudden, overnight, they disappeared. They completely closed up shop and disappeared. No way to contact them. I mean, I guess I could hire a private investigator if I wanted to do that, but I don't need to do business with someone who's completely subdued like that now. But I've never had any problems with them. They've been a great company, so I've always referred everyone to them. I know the products. They have all the stuff online, on hand in their library of the things that I use and the things that I've done that works really well sign-wise. Well, at business cards as well and all that stuff. Well, so from the perspective of signs, you'll see information marketers out there trying to pull people into their world by saying, well, you don't want to put signs out, and you don't want to do this, and you don't want to mail letters, and you don't want to do drive-arounds and all that kind of stuff. What they're trying to do is appeal to people who have done that, and either they're tired of it or they haven't made any money at it or whatever. But the bottom line is my number two method that brings me the most amount of business is my signs. That is the number 2 method right there that brings me a ton of business. It's my signs. It's the way that I use them, the way that I post them, the methods that I use to drive traffic to whatever it is I'm doing based on that type of sign and what it is that I'm doing with it. So my signs are very important to me. And so when that business disappeared, lo and behold, a month later, they had been gone. Or I should say over a month ago, they're gone, and I had just ran out of pointer signs, and I needed some more pointer signs. So we call them, and that's when we found out that they don't exist anymore. So what I've done is I've gotten with a new company that's online. Everything that they've done so far is right on the money, very personalized handling. Matter of fact, it's easier than dealing with a local store. And not saying anything about that business. That business is fine, but I didn't have to go anywhere. All I did was push a few buttons, and everything's set up for me. I don't want to tell you the name of the company yet. I'm going to tell you the name probably by the beginning of next week. And the reason for that is the signs that I've ordered are not here yet. They're in the mail. They've been shipped. I've got the UPS tracking number, all that kind of stuff. But I want to physically see them the way that I've asked them to do it before I say, hey, this company is 100%. They're a company that's, I think they're either 14 or 18 years old, and it's a family-run business. And everything seems to be very, very good, very professional, very easy, very down to earth, very simple to deal with. But as soon as I see the product, then I'll let you know about them, as long as I'm happy with it. If I'm not happy with it, then I'm not going to promote them to anyone. If I'm happy with it, then I'm promoting them. And when I promote like that, you probably shouldn't do what I do, but I don't look for any type of an affiliate fee or anything like that. Most times when you're dealing with information marketing companies, which that is not me, anything that you order through their link, that means they're getting a percentage of what you spent with that other company. So they do an affiliate agreement. Now, mathematically, it makes a whole lot of sense. But for me, I make plenty of money off my real estate deals. I don't charge very much at all on the training side. I'm very reasonable compared to what you get out there from these other people. So as far as any kind of an affiliate fee, I try to get the company that I'm dealing with to make the cost as low as possible, so they don't have me to pay. So maybe they can pass that savings on to you. And I'm certainly not telling you that you shouldn't do an affiliate agreement with someone. I'm just telling you that the way that I've positioned myself over the years, I don't need that additional income revenue coming towards me. So signs are really, really important. They always have been. I'll give you one example. I spent on 1, 2, 3, 4. There were 4 separate signs that I bought, and the cost was $488 of that one technique that I used. And that system right there made me a little over $1 million in real estate deals in less than 4 months. So the way that I do signs and the things that I do with signs are always important. Signs will always be an important part of my world, and I really think they should be of yours as well. You're going to run into the issues of ordinances and the self-appointed sign police and all that kind of stuff, associations, homeowners associations, and all that kind of stuff. So you just got to find out what the rules are, comply with the rules, and still accomplish what you're trying to do. So I'll give you an example, being as I'm talking about signs there with that one. So let's say that you want to put a sign out that you buy houses. You just want to tell people that you are a business that buy houses, and you want to put either your website on there, you want to put your email address or your phone number, however you want them to get a hold of you, and your quick messages that you buy property. Okay, so in the city that you're in, they say, oh, you can't put those signs, you can't stick them on stakes in the ground, on the public access right-of-ways. You can't do that. You can't fasten on telephone poles. You can't put them on trees. You can't do any of this kind of stuff. So the bottom line is, when you get to a place like that, a point like that, you can look for who is it, what properties, what type of property is allowed to have a sign on their property, on their personal property. Then look to see if you can make an agreement with them. Maybe it's an agreement like, hey, I'll have a pizza delivered every Friday night to your house at 7 o'clock of your choice. What kind of pizza do you want? If you'll just allow me to have my sign sitting in your yard on your private property that the public can see, but it's not on the right of way. So that, there's so many different ways of accomplishing what you're trying to do by getting your message out. It could be that you're putting signs on a vehicle that you want to park that vehicle or a trailer or what have you, and you want to park that vehicle, that trailer, in a heavily populated area where people are going to that store or whatever. So you might want to put that you have properties for sale with your terms on it, and you might want to put that on a vehicle of yours and park it in the parking lot at a flea market. So, there's so many different ways of accomplishing, but you can't stick it on the right of way. You can't because of their ordinances, but you can put it on your vehicle and park your vehicle in a parking space. You might park a vehicle of yours with, signage on it in the parking lot of a commercial business where maybe you're renting that one parking space from the owner of that complex. If somebody came to me on one of my commercial complexes and said, "Hey, can I park my van?" It's a 16-foot by 8-foot by 8-foot U-Haul style van, box truck, on your property in one of the parking spaces, and I want to rent one of the parking spaces from you. Of course I would do that. Maybe they want to pay $50 a month or something for it to sit there. There's nothing wrong with that. And to add to that, if somebody were advertising my business on that vehicle as well as their business, then I'm even more likely to do something like that. Now, not everybody will. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. So that's a little bit about signs. So more to come on signs. I'll be putting it out there on the social network once I do have my newest signs ordered from this company and I physically see them and if I'm happy with them, then I'm spilling the beans and giving you the whole enchilada on how to order through them, who to go through, what the name of the company is, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Let's see. Are there any questions about that part right there, Vicki? Anybody ask any questions now about any of that?
I don't see any questions. I do know that, Lewis, I know that you're on your phone, so is there any way to communicate through the screen you were just typing in your questions? And I'll go ahead and ask Joe those questions for you, because I can't see you any other way.
Maybe, Vicki, with him, because he's out on the road driving and stuff, maybe what he could do is call in and maybe we could put him on speakerphone to ask his question. So you could try that and see if that might work for him.
Okay.
All right. So just let me know if that happens. Okay. So let's go to the next thing here. So the next part of this that I wanted to talk about today, I'm going to build a really, really simple program that's going to be all about creating the right flow. And I see people making a mistake with this all the time, constantly. They don't have the right flow in place. And when I say flow, I'm talking about acquiring properties, and I'm talking about making money off of those properties. So number one, you got to know how to go out and get properties all different ways. I don't recommend that you try to get properties only one way. I don't recommend that you be just a person that goes out and borrows money from the bank and buys a fixer-upper with a construction loan, and then your first draw was the money that it took just to buy the property. Then your next draw is to maybe do the demolition to it, and then maybe the next draw, a percentage of that goes towards some of the rebuild or repair, and then your final draw is the rest of it. There's nothing wrong with that technique. What I'm saying is don't only do that. If you do only one of anything, it's going to be feast and it's going to be famine. I've only been doing real estate for over 5 decades, real estate and construction, so it's going to be feast and it's going to be famine. So I'm going to transfer out of that world into a different world for a minute to kind of prove my point. So it's very common for me to see people in the construction world where they might be a subcontractor. As a matter of fact, my youngest daughter, we were just talking about this morning. We just got done having some heating and air, a new heating and air system put into her house with new ductwork and all that kind of stuff. And, the subcontractors is something else, man, to deal with. And a general contractor ends up becoming what's called an overpaid babysitter. But here's the thing. In the subcontracting world, you've got people who subcontract all the way down to, well, let's use heat and air, for example. You got people who will set the unit, sweat the two pieces together, the compressor and the air handler. They're going to sweat that together, and maybe they're going to hook up the electrical to it at a disconnect right there at the unit, at the two pieces, right? So there's a disconnect for the outside and a disconnect for the inside. But they're not going to do any duct work. That's a different subcontractor that does that. So what I'm saying is, people who do that, they shoot themselves in the foot. It's feast and it's famine. They might have 50 jobs lined up where they can set all those units and not have to mess with any duct work at all. And so they're fine. But then after they're done with that 50, there's no more work for them for 3 months. So they shot themselves in the foot. But if they did all of the units and did the duct work, now they've got other possibilities of doing more units and more ductwork jobs. All right, maybe it's concrete. The subcontractor used to be where, the guy who did the concrete, let's just say he does the floor and the foundation, he would, dig and pour the footer. He would lay the block up to where the comes up high enough to where the floor is being poured, and then he's going to do a pour from there, pouring the floor and the cinder block that sit on top of the footer, all in one pour there. So now that's three different things. So you got the guy who pours the footer, then you got the guy, a different subcontractor who lays the block. You got a different subcontractor who puts all the dirt into it. And of course, now your plumber, and if your electrician's involved, your electrician comes and they lay all their plumbing and electrical in that dirt. And then it's time to tamp it down. Then the soil gets treated for termites. And then another concrete guy comes and pours that concrete. And then it could be another sub who actually finishes the top of that, depending on the size of that job. So you got all these different people when it could have been narrowed down to just a few. So what happens is those guys do really well. They get really good. They have just the tools to do that one piece of it, but they don't have the tools to do another. So a guy who does finishing of the top portion of the concrete floor, they don't have maybe a backhoe or something to dig the footers with, so they don't have that tool, so then they choose not to do that type of work. Well, sooner or later, they're running out of work. So now let's go back into the house in different ways. Before there were subcontractors, there was a thing called tailgaters. So I'm showing my age here to you, but a tailgater was the very beginnings of people who were subcontractors. So a tailgater was a person who would drive up with a truck, had a bunch of people who were willing to work in the back of the truck, and they'd show up to a construction site, and they'd do just one specific job on that site. So the general contractor was there with their own employees doing all different types of construction trades building this project. And then here comes this truckload of people who were going to go just do this one thing. All right. And so that was the very beginning of subcontractors. Now, why I'm tying that back into real estate is this. It's gotten so crazy out there in building a house that you have subcontractors who do the footer, the rest of the footer or foundation, the floor. Then you have other contractors who clear the land. You have other subcontractors who maybe frame up the wood framing or what have you. Then somebody else does the sheetrock. Someone else does the siding. Someone else does the roofing. Someone else does the trim work inside. Someone else does the cabinet work. Someone else does on and on. There's like 50 different trades if you wanted to kind of separate it out, as ridiculous as that goes out there. So in the old days, a general contractor did it all and had people on his payroll that were not subcontractors. They were employees, and they did it all. And then it kind of separated as the tailgaters came in, and then this beginning of the subcontractors came in. So what happened was the only guy that's making a lot of money is the general contractor. The rest of it is that the subcontractors are making a lot of money when there's a huge project going on. As soon as that huge project's going or done, it's hard. They have a hard time finding work because they only do this one thing. All right. So if they did framing, they did trim work, they did cabinet work, and they installed floor tile and shingles and siding, if the same person did all of that, then they'll never be feast and famine. They'll always have work. Okay, so now back into the real estate world. So if you only do lease options, if you only do seller financing, if you only do subject twos, if you only do pretty houses, if you only do ugly houses, on and on, if you're only doing one piece of this, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, and it's going to be feast and famine. Okay? So getting the flow right and understanding, you may decide that you don't want to do ugly houses. I don't want to get involved in doing any kind of, remodels and all that kind of stuff because the contractors come in and they're a headache and to deal with, and it's this and it's that. And I get that. But there's no reason why you can't understand it well enough that you joint venture with someone else on that deal that came across your desk and you said, you know what, I'm not going to do this, but Bob down the street does it, so I'm going to do a little joint venture and I'm going to make a little bit off of it while Bob does that one. So Bob's got the headaches, but I make a little bit because I connected Bob with this job. I might turn right around and make money off of it by putting my buyer into Bob's property after it's fixed, because now it's a pretty house. So does that make sense? Okay, I know you're not answering me, but anyhow, so I want you to kind of realize that there's so many different directions to get this flow right. So this program that I'm about to build is, I did something similar to it years ago, and it worked really well for people. They really grasped it, they really understood, and then they could kind of categorize when something came into them. Where should I put that? Is that something that I just, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole because I don't know anything about it? Or does it go into this category where I'm not really sure about it? I don't have a dream team that can help me with it. I put it over here. It's like, okay, well, I know how to do those. So that's one of the ones I'm doing. What do you do with all those deals? Because all of them, you let people know you're a real estate investor. You want to buy and sell real estate. There's going to be deals thrown at you that you may not want to do or know how to do, but someone else does. And it could be just a matter of mentoring you through it so that now you can add that to your, say, portfolio of, or your own internal resume of what you're able to do or know how to do. So this little program will help you immensely. So just stay tuned. You'll be seeing that pop up here by the beginning of the year. That'll be out there for everyone to take advantage of there. Now, let's talk a little bit more about that flow. Vicki, any questions come up out there yet?
Yes, I do have one. It's more about payment receiving.
Oh, okay.
It says, "Hi, Joe. This is Karen. I'm listening mode only. What do you do with a tenant that will pay their monthly amount late after the 5th, but leave off their late fees and wait until the next month and say it will be paid when they go through their Zelle through the bank," which is like a PayPal type thing. It goes from bank to bank account. They wait until the middle of the end of the month. How to correct this? They know that we do not accept partial payment. They do it anyway, just not sure how to approach it.
Okay, so number one, if you're not going to accept a partial payment, so if the late fee is missing out of this month's, and next month when they try to pay, let's say that they're paying you $1,400 a month and their late fee was $50. And so you accepted the $1,400 this month, but they were late this month. Next month, they owe you the $1,450. They owe you the $50 late fee, so they owe you $1,450 because they owe you $1,400 for next month and $50 late fee. So as long as you've let them know ahead of time that their monthly payment now, next month's payment is $1,450, not $1,400, and that you won't accept anything less than that, and then they're in default, then that gives you the positioning to then collect the late fee from that point on. Now, there's been times, Karen, where we have let people get by with it so many times. I mean, I'm not sitting here telling you that our system is perfect. It doesn't take much of a sob story to make us kind of melt. So the other way that you can approach this is when it's time to renew the agreement, because your agreements should be no more than a year long with your tenant and buyer. So when they're a little bit behind on late payments, let's say they've ran up $300 worth of late payments over that year. Now, when it's time to renew the agreement, you're not renewing the agreement until they've paid the $300 there, and then you'll renew the agreement for the the next year, or you can change what the monthly is to incorporate in what that what you would want to collect on it, being they were $300 behind. So here's an example of the way I do that. So $1,400 a month, they're in it. I would have easily gone $1,400 next year too if they've been paying their payments earlier on time, but they weren't. So now we got $300 that they owe me in late payments. So now the next year, your new payment is $1,425, and so you're collecting $1,425 per month for that next year. And then the following year, if it happens again, now you're up to $1,450 and so forth and so on. And those are not, just magical numbers. I just grabbed them out of the air. But that's the way that you can do that. Now you can play hardball, and you can just refuse to take that next payment and let it go to court. I mean, it's going to cost you more than what that late payment fee is to go to court one time, but let that collect over time. Now, this brings me into, listen, guys, I've done real estate for so long. It's going to bring me into a story that's happened to us multiple times way in the past. We kind of have figured out how to keep that from happening nowadays, but way back, we were buying properties subject to. That means we're taking over the existing debt subject to. The deed transfers into our entity's name, but the debt stays in the seller's name. All right. So in the past, way in the past, we used to not worry about changing the mailing address with the lender, so that the let's say that Bob and Carol were the owners of the house, and they had a loan on the property through Bank of America. So Bob and Carol were always receiving their payments and their change in their payment information and all that kind of stuff at their address. It might be the house that we're talking about, or it might be a different property. But they were always receiving the the information from the bank saying, oh, okay, taxes have changed, insurance amount has changed, you're a little bit behind, you're over on your payments, your escrow has grown above and beyond what you owe, all that kind of stuff. So what happened to us a few times was all of a sudden we'd get this notice, and it was usually a call from the original seller. Hey, the bank's saying that they're going to foreclose on the property. It's like, foreclose on the property? What the hell are you talking about? We make the payments on it every month. And so in investigating it, Vicki would find out that, the payment changed by $17 a month, and it went on for like 2 or 3 years, and then we didn't know this, so $17 a month has grown over 2 or 3 years, and then there's a bill sitting there of, $900, and so they refuse to take any more payments, and now they're filing, to foreclose on the property. So lenders do that. Lenders will allow you to get so far behind or miss, you're short by a few dollars here or there, and they'll let it grow to a certain amount. And then once they get to a certain amount, then it's worth it to them to, go to court if they have to over it. And so you could run that business, Karen, like that and collect it that way. So, all right, I hope that helped you. Next question. Victoria, any other questions there? Victoria, are there any other questions there, hon?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, no, there's no other questions right now, and she did say thank you.
Okay, Jim Fetzner just raised his hand.
Yep, hold on just a moment.
Maybe you don't want me seeing this part of it. I usually don't see this part. So, all right. Does Jim have a question?
Hold on just a second.
Okay. Guys, the best way to ask these questions, though, is to come on, audio, so that you can speak directly to me, ask the question, and then we can be sure that we're answering it. I mean, you might ask a question, and I need you to answer 3 different things for me to tell you which way I would go with it. So just writing the question down, sometimes it just takes so long to actually get the question answered.
Okay, Jim, are you there?
Yes.
Hey, Jim.
Hey.
I must have hit the wrong key.
Okay.
No,
well, you got us now.
Probably me.
You got us now, Jim. Go ahead and hit me with your question.
No, I don't have a question. I hit that thing by mistake.
Oh, okay. All right, Jim. Well,
Right.
I'm glad to know you're at least pushing something anyhow, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So, Vicky, any other questions there?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. All right. So let me go back into this flow a little bit, and like I said in the beginning there, before I was talking about Karen's situation, you got to have a way where you're pre-screening what's coming across your desk at a really fast rate. But the one thing that you want to realize, if you can start getting this in your mind that no, I can make money if everybody's willing to work with me that's involved. I can make money off of just about any kind of real estate deal that comes into my world. And it's not just about making money, but let's face it, if you're in business for yourself and you're not making money, you're not going to be in business for yourself very long. So if you can get yourself to where you're so versatile or so flexible that there's so many different ways that you can realize that you can make money off of that kind of a deal. Here's an example. I love to use examples to kind of get my point across. And, I'm sorry if you guys get tired of listening to me go on and on and on, but this is a great example. A lot of times in a lot of cities, there's these, sections that are maybe war zones, and they're junk houses and they're bad neighborhoods, and you don't want to mess with it just because it's not worth it. The houses may be $10,000 or $20,000 in that area, and they're old houses. They might be, 40 or 50 years old, and there's just something that you don't want to mess with. But constantly you're having these calls that, hey, you say you buy houses, any price range, any condition. I got one in war zone number 7. All right. So you can take a look at what the construction is, what the material was used way back in the day on that property, and you might find out that that material is in great demand for maybe historic restorations or what have you. Maybe these houses were built in, maybe it was a mill town and it was built in the early 1900s or the late 1800s, and they're not of any historical value, but they have a lot of the old type of material that was used, the wood that is sought after for historic restorations. So you might buy the property and have an agreement, an affiliate agreement or a joint venture agreement with someone else who tears the house down, strips the material of any kind of metal, and then they run it through a mill type situation or planers, or they make tongue and groove, or they make trim out of it, of the old style lumber that's used in for historical sites that they're restoring this back to original condition somewhere else, and that product is used there, and you're making money off of selling that material to this business that does that for a living. So once you do that, you've bought the house. That means you own the property. The house has been torn down and stripped, and now you just look to see if the neighbors next door to that property would want to buy that property back from you, maybe for what you paid for the whole house and everything. Let's say you bought the house for $10,000, you got $8,000 for the historical restoration wood from it, and then you turn around and sell the land, maybe split it in half and sell half of it to the neighbor on the left for $5,000 and half of it to neighbor on the right for $5,000. Well, you just made $18,000 back off of your $10,000 investment. So, there's always something you can do. And of course, doing those kind of deals are best when you didn't write any more than a $10 check on them. And so, getting your flow, going back to me talking about this. Getting the flow going to where no matter what comes across your desk, or no matter where you're at and you say something and somebody says, oh, why, blah, 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 you can manipulate that situation into you being able to make money and providing something of value to everyone else involved. Now, if you're not providing anything of any value to anyone, then stay away from that. If you haven't gotten to that point, you need to be making money off of it and providing value to others as well simultaneously. So that that's the direction of the flow that I wanted to go with. Now, that's acquiring the properties. Now, on the other side of selling the properties, there's so many different ways of making the sale or the deal happen when you're dealing with your buyers. So there are hundreds of ways of making the deal work with your buyers. You might have a buyer that pops up. I'm thinking of a story that happened not too long ago where the guy didn't have any money for a down payment. He could handle a little bit of a monthly payment, but he didn't have any kind of a down payment. So the money that he could handle monthly was more than enough to cover what the taxes and insurance were on a property that we had that he wanted. What he had, though, that was of interest to us was he had 5 Harley Davidsons restored, wanting to trade them for the house. Well, I was taking the house over for 25 grand to begin with. So trading 5 restored Harley Davidsons, they were worth way more than $25,000, but he didn't have the liquid cash. He had these bikes sitting there that he had spent money on, and he had parts that he had saved from different places. So he was able to acquire the house by using more of a trade, kind of like back in the day. Excuse me just a second. Back in the day, if one person would trade eggs for milk from another person, for fur or what have you from another person, and they would trade what they had of value. They didn't have money. Well, we still want to go back to the money thing. So I don't need 5 Harley Davidsons. I'm not gonna drive motorcycles anymore and all that kind of stuff. But I can certainly take those motorcycles and market them properly and get them sold and make a fair profit off of them, and he didn't have to come up with the cash. So there's so many different ways. If you can become flexible and you can become knowledgeable on not making an assumption that what those Harleys are worth. One person might realize they're worth over 10 grand a piece. Another person might say they're not worth but $1,800 a piece. Well, having a connection where it's kind of like that one show, the Pawn Stars, I think it was, where people would come into the store, wanting to pawn. They were literally what they're doing is they're not actually pawning. They're coming in looking for cash for items they're bringing in. Well, sometimes the guy would have, that owned the store, had enough expertise to know what that thing was that was being brought into him and about what it was worth. And then there's times where he would call in an expert. Well, you can all you got to do is go online and find out about what those bikes are worth, and then figure that you're not going to be able to sell them for full price, and you're going to sell them for maybe 70 to 80% of their full price value, and use that as a good number. You might want to use 50% just to make sure that, where Murphy can swing, go into your world and screw you up a little bit so that Murphy can kind of help you there. So there's a lot of different ways to make this work when it would normally have been something you would have thrown in the trash. So I'm going to build this program. It's going to be very easy, very inexpensive for you to understand, and how to, have these different, think about them as wagon wheel spokes. You're the hub, you're the center of this wagon wheel, and there's all these opportunities coming in. Each spoke is a different opportunity coming into this hub. And so now what do you as the hub do with it? I don't want you throwing it in the round file anymore, in the trash. I want you realizing I can take this and I can make money off of this by going this direction and going that direction and going the other. So I'm kind of opening your mind up and getting you thinking in more ways than just black and white. All right. So let me stop right there, see if there's any other questions to make sure everybody's been answered. Did we ever hear anything back from Lewis on him being able to ask the question he was trying to ask?
No, I never heard anything back from him.
Okay. All right. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to say going once, going twice, going a third time. All right. One last thing I want to say, Vanessa, I'm going to be giving you a call in a few minutes if you're still there. I'm going to give you a call. I've got a couple of suggestions for you on that next profitable real estate deal that we're getting involved in with you. So we will talk to everyone soon. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. If you haven't realized that we've put a major discount out there on a lot of our products, you can go to any of my social sites there, and you can see a list of the prices, what the regular prices are, which were cheaper than everybody else, and then what the discounted prices are. I don't know how long we're going to leave that up. We're going to leave it up for a while. I just don't believe in a Black Friday or a Cyber Monday only. I also know that, you know, during the holidays, people are very much distracted, and I'd rather you have all your focus when you're getting involved with me, because I want you to be successful. All right, everybody, I will talk to you again soon. Again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Bye now.